Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today I'm going to talk about a little bit of history, but not history that's necessarily written in the books, but history through God's eyes, okay? History through the return work that I have been doing since 2019. I'm going to talk about Abraham Lincoln. I'm going to talk about the Emancipation Proclamation, and I'm also going to tell you why I want to talk about those, because when I was doing the return work in the beginning, one of the first things that I did was clear Mount Shasta. This is such an important component. Mount Shasta is one of the biggest pieces of the undoing, okay? There was many, but it's very important. It's a very important key. And later on, we learned what Mount Shasta really was, and it does pertain to the red dragon. If you don't know about the prophecies being fulfilled right now, the red dragon undoing is one of them. Okay. And after I cleared Mount Shasta, I began activating pyramids. Okay. Mount Shasta was very much so tied to Fiji because something was taken. Okay. So I'm going to get into that. It's very important to understand this for understanding truth, for rising into new earth, for not being duped and lied to. And it also kind of helps you undo that veil of illusion. Okay. Because Mount Shasta, my friends, is a big part of the veil of illusion. Okay. So let's get into it. My name is Master Juniper Blue Mystique. That is what Spirit called me. That was the name they gave me, the title. I am an Ascension Master, a Master Healer, and a Divine Guide. Since 2019, I had a Kundalini awakening, and I have been doing crazy things to the earth. I do one-on-one healings, but when I do these workshops, it always is part of the return work. Okay? That is what I do, and I don't make it up. It just comes through me. Okay? The whole entire thing unfolded as a part of my own awakening journey. And it all happened in a row and in a very particular order. Okay. That's important to understand. So on my channel, you can find these videos, just a very quick share of where to find Mount Shasta Part 1, Fiji Part 1, and Mount Shasta Part 2. You do not have access to Fiji Part 2. Okay. It is only where God told me to put it, which is in the path to righteousness, because we can't allow people with shadow to keep infecting this kind of work. It has to be for pure of hearts. Okay, so this is my playlist on this channel. Very important playlist. This is everything and how it unfolded for me, and most of it is an extreme order of how it unfolded for me. Mount Shasta Part 1, processing Jesus's death, was also in that time frame. Okay. How are they connected? What does Abraham Lincoln have to do with all of this? Well, I'm going to tell you. Mount Shasta was undone. And I undid it on 11/11 of 2020. I know because I'm writing my book. So I put that detail in there. But it was on 11/11 of 2020 when I cleared Mount Shasta Part 1. Then I activated my first pyramid right after that in Fiji. Okay. A few months later. So November, December, January, February, about 4 months later, 3 months later in 21. Okay. These are big. You ever heard of the Truman Show? God told me to pay attention to that because he's trying to escape from Fiji. He's being controlled. He's being watched. He's being manipulated from the moon and he's trying to escape to Fiji. And I didn't put that together. I didn't understand what that meant until I did the work. And then I was like, oh my God, I get it now. But in Mount Shasta clearing part 1, you guys, Mount Shasta is not of light at all. Okay, there's a lot of people who think it's such a spiritual place to go. I know they do like all these spiritual retreats there. They do all kinds of stuff there. I thought that too, right? I didn't know any different until I went there in the energy, not physically, in the energy. And this was the workshop. And in that workshop, it's a long one, a lot came out. I freed hundreds of souls that were trapped there. And I do mean trapped there. They just started popping out, okay? And somebody else actually did a painting of me doing this work before I did this work. Okay, seriously, they did this painting. They're like, I don't know what this means. It's in your energy. I'm like, I don't know. And she goes, I just feel like I need to paint it. And then she sent it to me. Lo and behold, it depicted a lot of that work, the beginning parts of it. So in clearing Mount Shasta, listen carefully. I undid the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, why? Why does that make any sense at all? I asked Spirit today for clarification for what really happened to Abraham Lincoln, why, who he was, and a little more clarification about the Emancipation Proclamation. Okay? Now, before I did all this work, I got visions in my awakening. I used to get visions, downloads, right? During my awakening period. And one of those visions was of the Lincoln Memorial. Okay. Was absolutely unequivocally got an image of a man behind the pillars is all I knew. I'm like, what is that? He's behind the pillars. Then I realized that was the Lincoln Memorial. Now, if you pay, that was one of my first visions. I got quite a few after my awakening, and that was one of them. And it was very important, and I didn't know why yet. That was back in 2019. Okay. I saw the man sitting behind the pillars. And in my vision, it looked like, like just pillars and he's sitting behind it. And I'm like, what is that? And I had to look it up. It was the Lincoln Memorial. So why I got that download at that time, I had no idea. I had no idea what it meant or why I got it. I just knew it was profound. Okay. So very important. Then one of the first things I did was clear Mount Shasta right here. Okay. Hundreds of souls were freed there. I undid the Emancipation Proclamation and I began cleansing it because then I activated Fiji and I returned the Earth's root chakra from Mount Shasta back to Fiji. So it takes place between Mount Shasta Part 1 and 2 and Fiji Part 1 and 2. Fiji is the portal of the gods. There's a pyramid there under the water. And the root chakra originated from there. It's the true foundation of the earth. And it was stolen and placed at Mount Shasta. Now, in Mount Shasta, there's all these caves underneath and these tunnels and darkness. And there was all these souls trapped there. And I'm not kidding you, lots of them. And it took me 30 days pretty much to process those souls. I had to process their deaths. So here really quickly, Mount Shasta Part 1, then Fiji Part 1. Part 1, there's 2 parts to everything I do because I am a feminine and a masculine. I have a twin soul that I started waking up and I didn't know that. Okay. And we started uniting and clearing Jesus's death and all this kind of crazy stuff. And then I started healing the sun and the moon. Okay. Now you can also find Mount Shasta Part 2, which did not process out until way later after undoing all this other stuff. And it is right here. And Archangel Samael was the original fallen angel, and he burned when I undid those contracts. Okay. Hear me. Very important stuff. And what does Abraham Lincoln have to do with it? What does love have to do with it? Everything. What does Abraham Lincoln have to do with it? I didn't know. Why would I undo the Emancipation Proclamation? Because in people's minds, it was a good thing. And clearing Mount Shasta was darkness. Mount Shasta was darkness. Okay. So here's part 2 of Mount Shasta, done in 23. So all the work I've been doing just keeps coming since 2019 when I had my awakening. Okay. So be sure to check those out. Mount Shasta Part 1 and 2 and Fiji Part 1. You cannot enter into Fiji Part 2 because I fully open and awaken the God's portal there. And unless your heart is in it to win it, God didn't want energy there that doesn't belong. Okay, so that's why not everything I did was uploaded to YouTube. So why on earth would I undo the Emancipation Proclamation? The thing is all this was a part of my awakening and it took a lot to process and it was quite painful because in Mount Shasta Part 2, it was supposed to be my DM doing that one because the masculine sacrificed a feminine there. So Mount Shasta was actually filled with lots of bloodshed, lots of darkness, and they needed sacrifice. Okay. It like fueled their flame, like darkness, right? Darkness needs sacrifice. Darkness needs bloodshed, not God. Fiji was the true earth root chakra. Okay. And it was stolen and taken to Mount Shasta. Now, this is why California was cut off from life support when I did this work. That's true. It's dead to the map of the earth. It will not exist in New Earth. That's not a maybe. I had to process that. And they said changes in tides would come in through San Francisco. Okay. So this is very important to understand. I can't make this up if I tried, you guys. I didn't know anything about this stuff. I don't travel anywhere. I was a mom and I have a psych degree, and that's what I did. Okay. So all of this stuff was new to me. I had to process it and try to understand it. So remember, one of the first downloads I got was of the Lincoln Memorial, but at the time I'm like, this is a man behind the pillars. What is this? And I knew it had to do with like the White House. So it took me a second to realize that. And I didn't understand what it meant. Then I cleared Mount Shasta Part 1 like a year after that. Yeah, because that happened 11/11/2020, so a little over a year after that. And I undid the Emancipation Proclamation, started cleansing the root chakra, cleansing all the darkness out, freed all of the souls from there. Okay, that was just part 1. Part 2 went further and further, and I undid more contracts. Archangel Samael burned, and California was cut off from life support. And Fiji, part 1 and 2 was recovered, regained. I uncovered the God portal there that they buried and shut down. Is it kind of making sense to what happened to this earth now? I hope so, because it goes into what really happened to Abraham Lincoln. Why would I undo the Emancipation Proclamation? I wanted a little clarity in that. Never really asked. I just kept following the nudges, and I didn't have time to think. I just was doing, okay, and processing and trying to understand and clearing the shadows. And it was literally taking over my life, okay? So important to watch those and don't judge. It's real work. Okay, this is real work, and people have a hard time seeing truth, and partly because of that false foundation. Now, later on in the journey, recently, we realized that Mount Shasta was the red dragon. They had me draw a dragon. It was a white dragon. And then I activated the pyramids, which brought all the sun through the pyramids, because I activated a lot more pyramids after that one, after Fiji. Like a lot. All the feminine ones were first. Then later on in the journey, we went to the masculine ones and activated those. True, okay? And they do connect to volcanoes oftentimes. Very real. Are all the volcanoes pyramids? No, but they affect them, even if they're not. Kilimanjaro, however, was a masculine pyramid, and there were 3 peaks that I cleared, uncorked, and activated. Okay, so this is a lot, but it's so important, and it's so important not to judge it. That's why God said I couldn't put everything on YouTube for free for everybody to just take part in, and he had me put it in a path, because it's those who have pure hearts. If you bring shadow into this work, it will hurt you, because we can no longer do that. We can no longer be duality. That's what I've done. Okay? True story. And it took a long time for me to process. So what does the Emancipation Proclamation have to do with it? I've kind of questioned that, to like, now that I'm kind of sitting back going, looking back on a lot of the journey, I'm like, why did I do that? Why was that so important? I mean, I kind of did a little insight to it before. I kind of see it. I saw it when I did it, but I wanted more clarity. Okay. I wanted more clarity and more insight to that. Mount Shasta was the red dragon. Mount Shasta created a false foundation. A false foundation. So you know how they say we live in a matrix? Mount Shasta solidified that. They took the power of the moon and the sun. They did that through Stonehenge. So you put all these pieces together, and you can see the steps they took to take away the land of God and to enslave mankind. Hence, Abraham Lincoln is behind pillars. Have you ever noticed that? I want to show you something, because it came out today a little bit, and the relevance of that. Have you ever looked at the Lincoln Memorial with an just open mind, right? Like, everybody looks at it like, oh, what a great guy, he freed mankind. You know, he was assassinated, and for a reason. And then they undid the Emancipation Proclamation. So if it was truly good, why did that happen? Okay. So let's look at, I'm going to show you the Lincoln Memorial and show you the significance of the image. So imagery is very important. Okay, our mind, our consciousness, our knowing, our reality works through images. We are 93% language outside of communication. So what we see, what we sense, body language, those kinds of things. Very important to our form of understanding the world around us, but it's subliminal. Okay, I know I'm hypnotherapist, clinical, certified, becoming. Not like all the other hypnotherapists you see, okay? It's mastering the mind, it's psychology based. So, I mean, all of it really is, but this is true, okay? Like, this is for real legit stuff that I'm trying to explain to you, is because It's significant. This is what they do to you. This is what they've been doing to you. Okay. It's like they make you. Let me just show you this image because it takes a moment to truly grasp in our mental capacity the world we've been living in and how they use it against us as a weapon. Okay. So this is one of the images I got. Now, I got it from the perspective of these four pillars and seeing the statue of Abraham. That was one of the first downloads I got. And then when I cleared Mount Shasta, I undid that. So if it was such a good thing, why did we have to undo that? Okay. I'm going to kind of go into why and what happened to him. I actually got Abraham from the other side today. His spirit, his soul. So that was kind of cool. And he kind of showed me what happened to him. He showed me why. They told me what happened. They kind of gave me a little bit more insight into what it really was. So think of subliminal messages. Think of like an illusion. Okay. Like kind of like magic. They make you see something, right? But they hide the truth right beneath what you see, right? And so when you look at this image of Abraham Lincoln, what do you see? You probably think it's like, oh, it's a shrine to Abraham Lincoln because what a great guy, right? So it's their memorial. He looks like he's in prison. Think about that. He's behind the pillars. This image is very significant. He is, I'm going to get into it because wasn't he a lawyer? That's what came out today. He dealt with lawyer stuff. He was part of the judicial system. And that is part of also what I undid when I undid the Sistine Chapel. Okay, those are the biggest components of darkness. Sistine Chapel, religion, Mount Shasta was one of the first steps to undoing all the rest. Okay, because it was a false foundation. So if you pay attention to the Lincoln Memorial, Abraham Lincoln looks like he is in prison for a reason. That's why it's like this. And they can go ahead and tell you, no, it's pillars, it's blah, 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 puke out the mouth. Okay, because that's what they do. They lie. And they lie to you so well, you believe every lie they say, right? Right. Right? Okay. So I even am writing this in my book of the return work. I'm going truly into the details of how everything came through because it all happened very quickly, very intensely. It's all recorded on this channel because God is good. And I was recording everything I was doing because I'm a healer. I record them and give them theirs. I was doing workshops and that's where these would come through. Okay. So when I say I'm doing workshops, you better believe it's part of the return. And unfortunately, we don't have a front line of people respecting that work and trying to bring it through for mankind. Not directly connected to this earth. You do have star seeds and light workers that are talking about it, that have been trying to wake people up. So just a little bit more of an indirect line. But anywho, Mount Shasta was a false foundation. I need you to hear that. It was the red dragon. That is biblical. When I was battling my twin flame journey, God called it the deep blue sea that I was fighting. That's also part of the times of return. I didn't know all that. I had to look up what that meant. It means El Diablo. When I activated the pyramids, God showed me again that the red dragon was undone. And I drew a white dragon named Algonquin. And I didn't know how to draw a dragon, and I argued with spirit, and they're like, just draw this image. So I did. And then like 2 weeks later, it came through, the red dragon was undone. That talks about the false foundation, the matrix system that they created on a false foundation. The judicial system is a part of that false foundation. It absolutely is. I undid it too. So why would Abraham Lincoln look like he's in jail? For a reason. Okay. So they enslaved the land. They enslaved mankind. That's what they did. But they make you think the illusion of magic. Look over here and not what's really happening over here. Okay. That's what they've done to you. You're in a simulation. That's why people call it that. It's a false reality. It's a false world not connected to God. They stole it. Okay. They changed it. They manipulated it and they created this veil of illusion because of that. Because why is the veil of illusion a thing? Because they detached you from the truth of God. And that's who you are. That's what you're connected to. That's our all-seeing connectedness. So when they undid that, connection to the truth of the earth, the truth of God, it created a veil of illusion because we can no longer see God through it because they undid that through the earth. Okay. And it allowed them access to our consciousness, which is why they will say, hey, have you ever noticed not all those thoughts are yours? Right? You have to take your power back from your mind. Yeah, it's all a part of Mount Shasta and undoing Fiji. So they're connected. So when I octavied the pyramids and Mount Shasta came up, Fiji came up, and so did Kilimanjaro. Kilimanjaro was the masculine pyramids, okay? So those three became connected and intertwined, but the only ones filled with light are Fiji and Kilimanjaro. Mount Shasta is nothing. It has no life. And I do mean nothing. It's an empty vessel that will crumble and fall. And I'm not here to argue that with you. I know lots of people for a long time have been saying, oh my God, we're going to get a large earthquake up there, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. I know it will happen eventually. When? I don't know, and I don't care. I know it will happen. Okay. It's not up to us when. The earth has her own movement, right? Movement is continual. It's processing all this work. It's processing the cleansing and purging. So when it will cleanse is up to that. It's not up to me. It's not up to you. But I can tell you that it was undone and life support was cut off to California. I also predicted the fires that were coming there in a very weird way in my 2025 predictions. And not only that, when I was activating the pyramids, they showed fires starting a lot doing that. And some were started by man and some were started by purging. So you have to watch the pyramid activations. Okay, they're all very relevant. And during them, I would say, ooh, look what's happening. Oh my God, this is happening. Ooh, people are mad I'm doing this. Ooh, fires are going to start. Ooh, this is going to start. And then lo and behold, over the last couple of years, boom, 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 everything is circling back around that I said would happen. But you have to watch these things. Most people judge them, unfortunately. Okay. They hear me and go, oh, she must be cray cray. No, I'm not actually. And this work is very real. Okay. But what cut us off is that false foundation. That's what created the veil of illusion because they cut us off from the map of God. The earth is God's earth. It's not your earth. It's Eve's. It's Adam's. It's God's earth. It's not yours. You are a part of it. You are connected to it, and it was gifted for your life. Okay? You understand? So we're here to respect it. We're here to honor it. We're here to cherish it. And she supports us in return, and we love her in return. And she helps us connect to God. She is our connection to God. She is part of our clarity of the all connectedness. And when they changed that and cut it off and manipulated it, we could no longer see here. It's an enslavement. That's what Mount Shasta was a part of. So it was undoing the sun and the moon. I had to correct those two. And Sekhmet and Horus also came through later. And Adam and Eve, it's a thing. So I'm going to tell you what Spirit gave me about the true significance, and I've already kind of given you some of it, of Abraham Lincoln, the Emancipation Proclamation, Mount Shasta. So I asked who he was. He was also part of the judicial system, the Supreme Court of Justice. Hence, he looks like he's enslaved, like he's in prison. Why? That's significant, okay? And that's one of the first images I got in my awakening. I got others, the Bible and words popping off of it. I got an image of that and a few others, okay? And then I was just guided to continue going places and doing work that I had to process and try to understand myself. Because what I say goes against what they tell you to be true. The illusion. Look at the magic. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Only pay attention to the smoke and the illusions. Okay? Why did he look like he was imprisoned? Do you know he was assassinated right about the time they made the Emancipation Proclamation legal? Right about the time they put it into legality. He was assassinated, just like they tried to do to Trump. Trump may not be your best friend, but he's not a part of their agenda. Anytime in history somebody goes against their agenda, they take them out. That's why there was multiple attempts on Trump's life. Was there multiple attempts on Obama's life? No. Well, why not? He was the first Black president. Where's all the hate? Because don't we have all this racial tension and all this crap? It's part of the poison they want to spew to you. Okay. So this enslavement was not just people of color. And when I was also doing the recent workshop, I saw chain gangs and they've enslaved all kinds of forms of man. And this is one of the ways they did it. Mount Shasta and the Emancipation Proclamation, the sun and the moon was manipulated and changed and stolen, basically. The earth was stolen. And they changed the foundation to not of God. It was not a blueprint of God, which is why we would come here and not be able to see at our soul level in that connection, because they severed it. Okay, so I asked what this connection was, who he was, why and how he died. Then all of a sudden I started getting stuff. I saw Abraham come in and he kind of looked like he does, but he was also wearing just like a normal person, like jeans and a t-shirt kind of energy. You know what I mean? Not how he's always fancied up. But this is what I got right away. John Wilkes Booth, which I'm pretty sure we all know John Wilkes Booth shot him, right? But listen, he said, I heard John Wilkes Booth, actor in politics, associations, look to his brother, a setup and planned. So did he have a brother? John Wilkes Booth, brother. Echo, did John Wilkes Booth have a brother?
John Wilkes Booth's siblings were Asia Booth Clark, Eunice Brutus Booth Jr., and Edwin Booth.
Okay, so he has a few of them. Asia Booth Clark. Oop, it went away really fast. So he did have siblings. But this is what came out right away. John Wilkes Booth, he was an actor and politician. He was into politics, okay? He said actor in politics, which made me think, you know how we have Hollywood now and they're part of the false veil of illusion? Like their job is a distraction. Not all of them are that way, but in a large part, they're here to spew that and to help control the population. If you haven't noticed that by now, Hollywood was a false foundation and very dark. Look at the ditty, okay? It's all connected and it goes all the way back to before we were aware for a long time, okay? But if you go back to Adam and Eve, that's not what this earth was designed for. Nope. So what happened to you, Abraham Lincoln? And why is Mount Shasta a part of this? And what the hell is up with the Emancipation Proclamation? Why would I undo that? And I got John Wilkes Booth is an actor and in politics. He had political associations. Look to his brother. Look to his brother. And as I hear that, as I feel that, I feel like Abraham was actually friends with his brother. One of his brothers. He had ties with one of his brothers. He would talk to one of his brothers. He had a camaraderie. I think that word actually came out because that's what I'm hearing again. Yep. Camaraderie with one of his brothers. So John Wilkes Booth knew him. So John Wilkes Booth, actor in politics, associations, looked to his brother, a setup and planned. His murder was a setup and it was planned. He was invited to the Cathedral Theater Opera House. That's what they called it. A cathedral, a theater, opera house. It had little different energies in it. He was invited there by his brother, John Wilkes Booth's brother. And here's the thing I got is as they were there, Abraham Lincoln, kind of like today, you know how they have Secret Service and stuff? Well, even back then, he had people that were supposed to be like by his side, helping to protect. And I don't even know if it was like it was today, because I don't feel like it was such a guard like it is today. But I feel like they called it a guard. So they said his guard or his, I don't want to say bodyguard, but his person who's supposed to also be helping to protect him left just before he was shot. So he wasn't there alone. Abraham Lincoln was there with somebody, a couple people maybe, I don't know. He wasn't there alone. And somebody he was with left his side. It was an inside job. So kind of like the Trump rally that we had recently where there was a man on the roof and it was on top of a freaking police station nonetheless. There was a ladder going up to the roof and it was the only place that they didn't protect, and it was like, what, a few hundred feet away. Like everything else was so guarded. This was on top of the police station. There was a ladder going up, and oh, psh, psh, nobody go over there. And then somebody's like, hey, somebody's on top of the roof, and they didn't seem to care. Right? You feeling me? A little bit of an inside job. They even proved that quite a bit. But do people even want to see that? No. So here's the thing about psychology and your mind is that you become convinced of something. It's what your narrative of the mind has created to be, right? The map of your consciousness. And even if it's proven to be a lie, you will fight that with everything you've got because it's what you believe to be true. So even if there's evidence that it was a lie, your brain's going to go, yeah, I don't care. No, it's not true. So these have all been proven to be inside jobs. And even if somebody comes out and was like, yeah, something was wrong there, you're going to be like, no, it doesn't matter. I'm going to believe the illusion because it's what you accepted to be true. So you will actually fight the truth subconsciously. Okay. So, whoever his protection was or his person he was there with, association, left just before he was shot. And this is what Abraham was telling me. He asked to join him for some camaraderie. So John Wilkes Booth's brother was like, hey, dude, come hang out with me. Let's camaraderies. Okay. So he was like a comrade. And that's not really a term we use anymore, right? So he was invited to the Cathedral Theater Opera House by his brother, John Wilkes Booth's brother, his comrade. And he asked him to join him for some camaraderie. He went against their agenda. So Abraham was not a part of the agenda. Neither is Trump. That's why they don't like him. That's why they wanted him to not succeed. Because he's not going with their agenda. And if you haven't noticed, everything that Trump does, the judicial system is going against and stopping him with. And some things then the court's like, okay, yeah, we'll allow this. But who's he fighting? Who's in charge anyways? Not Trump. It has to be approved by the Supreme Court of Justice. Abraham Lincoln was a part of both systems. Hence, he looks like he's been in jail, imprisoned. And if you watch my work, I undid the Sistine Chapel, which was the darkest portal, or what you would call the portal to hell. Underneath the Sistine Chapel, that's where they trapped the cherub angels, who were the protectors of the Garden of Eden. And then in part 2, I told you the Pope would die, how he would die, and then it did happen. But it was more than that. Then after that, I undid the judicial system, which is a sector of the darkness. Okay. This is kind of all kind of clicking. I hope it does because it does for me. I'm like, holy shite, Batman, what a tangled web we weave, right? It's all a part of the magical illusion. Like, you don't see me. Anyways, look over here at the bright colors while I'm over here doing something really dark. Okay, so Abraham, just like Trump, went against their agenda and he had ties in the judicial system. Okay, all right. I know this. I feel it. And I think it might be also well known, but I feel like he was like a lawyer. He had part of and maybe I looked that up too. Like I'm not just psychically connecting to that. I feel like it's quite well known. He went against their agenda, and then they threw the word tyranny. So when John Wilkes Booth assassinated him, didn't he say "Sic semper simplify," which is like Virginia's motto also? And it means death to those who go against, basically, by any means necessary. So basically, I can kill you by any means, and it's justified because you went against my agenda. That's what it means. And that's what he shouted, except they make you believe that he was against the people. How does that make sense? How is Abraham Lincoln against people when he's trying to free the enslaved? So if we really put this together, it's part of that. Okay, so I need you to understand because it's hard for our consciousness to fathom this a little bit. Think of like a magic show. I make you think some things it's not, right? When underneath it's like really bad, and I'm going to make you think it's really good. And this tyranny, I'm going to throw it out, and you're not going to realize that we're the ones actually doing it, but we're going to make you believe that it's him. like a mirrored illusion. Mount Shasta is that. Okay. So it's kind of coming together here. So he went against their agenda. Tyranny, death is justified. And I did a little bit of a video on this before. And that's what they pointed to a lot of. According to what they wanted, okay? His death was justified to them because he went against with what they were doing. So they could kill him at any means necessary. It is justified. This is your justice system, by the way. Are you aware of that? It doesn't seem like that. It's an illusion, part of the false matrix system reality, a false foundation. Hence Mount Shasta. They stole the root chakra from Fiji. They created a veil of illusion. They used a lot of bloodshed there to keep it low vibration, to keep it part of their thing. Like it's all here. Then I cleared the Emancipation Proclamation when I undid Mount Shasta Part 1. So I'm like, Emancipation Proclamation, Mount Shasta, part of a false foundation, a deceptive act to realign a foundation. Because I'm like, why do they tie in together? And this was their answer. It was a deceptive act to realign a foundation. That's what it ended up being. Okay. It was not a contract of light. When I cleared the emancipation, it was almost like a blood contract, like the Holy Grail was. It was not a contract of light. If you don't believe me, watch all my videos. Abraham was attempting to change the foundation to undo some of what had been done. Now I did another video on Utah and that area up there because everybody's focused on the Grand Canyon, but I think it was the Utah basin that was much more important in history. And it dealt with land domination. It dealt with a lot of Native American tribes, the tribal land getting stolen and them becoming assassinated. So this ties in. So listen very carefully. So Abraham was attempting to change the foundation to undo some of what had been done. They were stealing land and killing people in his name at that time. So what is the president? He's a face and a name for their agenda. And they do whatever. It's like a puppet, just like a puppet. A lot of people want to believe as the president is the Antichrist. Nope. He is a puppet. And Trump is not a puppet. That's why they don't like him. He does things his way. It's not a part of their agenda. And Abraham was kind of the same way, but he was really, truly for the people. Let's listen. And Trump is too in a lot of ways. You just may not think so. Okay. So they were stealing land and killing people in Abraham's name. Some of the souls at Mount Shasta, which I just learned, were from that time frame. So I told you I freed hundreds of souls from Mount Shasta. They were trapped under there. They were trapped, fragmented souls. I freed them. And not only that, I had to process their deaths. There was a lot of women and children there too, by the way, a lot. And I literally had to stop work for 30 days. I couldn't do any more work on it for 30 days. I was processing a lot of heavy emotions for those deaths. I'm getting chills as I say that. You can watch it tore me up. Because not only do I free the souls, I process their deaths. For reals. So some of the souls at Mount Shasta were connected to that time frame of Abraham Lincoln's time frame when they were stealing land and killing people. It didn't matter if they were women and children, man, it didn't matter. Now in Mount Shasta Part 2, the masculine sacrificed the feminine, and he was Native American. I saw it. They were like native tribe lands, right? They didn't look as white as I did. They were some kind of native tribe. And it was painful. Part 2, I was in excruciating pain, so it wasn't supposed to be me. It was supposed to be my divine masculine doing it. Because in Part 2, at Mount Shasta, the puppet master got somebody to slice his feminine's throat, and all this bloodshed went there. So some of the souls that I freed from there were part of Abraham Lincoln's time frame and what was happening with the land. Okay. So he turned people against each other. They were from that time frame. They liked to turn people against each other, and Abraham wanted it stopped. So the emancipation that you know, the Emancipation Proclamation that you know, is not part of Abraham's origination creation. But people knew at that time that he was fighting for them. He was trying to speak his truth. This is what they showed me. He was trying to speak truth, like Trump has. He's trying to show truth of what they're doing to you. He was trying to show the truth. Okay. And so they shut him up. And then because he got stuff out, they made it look like they did something about it. But if you really read the Emancipation Proclamation, it didn't do what he wanted it to do. It freed very few things, and it was still for their agenda, really. But it made you think that they really, truly freed mankind. But the thing is maybe they would free some things, but behind the back, they were enslaving you more and more. Think about it. What are taxes? What is the judicial system? We're all controlled. You're not really free. Okay. Do you really own a home and land? They're still going to try to get you, right? They tax your land. If your home is fully paid off and you don't pay your land tax, guess what? They're going to take it all from you. Doesn't matter how much you've invested into it. You own nothing. And that's not God. God owns this earth. And it was taken, changed, manipulated, and justified, and then weaponized. And you've all been pretty controlled. We shouldn't have to fight for survival. That's not living. To fight to survive is not living. We should not be in survival mode 24/7. That's not freedom. Look at Abraham Lincoln. Dude was enslaved. He was locked up. Okay, so there became a hate campaign, slander, and lies, just like they did with Trump. Oh my God, they got everybody talking such shit about him. Oh, he's orange. Look at his hair. Look at this. Screw you, Batman. Like, what about you? Are you perfect? Like, what the hell? Like, who in what God's name makes that okay to make fun of people for any freaking reason? You see what I'm saying? This is what they do. This is what they do. They create hate campaigns. So Abraham wanted it stopped. A hate campaign and slander and lies ensued. It's what they do. Tyranny, and then they manipulated that word and the situation. Okay. They use the word tyranny to manipulate you because that's what they were doing to you. But they made it seem like Abraham was doing that because he was going against their agenda. And they will kill him by any means necessary. So when they throw tyranny, which they did towards Trump, it means they're going to kill you at any means necessary. It's justified because you're going against their agenda, their false world that they've stolen from all of mankind. God forbid we see the truth. Pay no attention to the truth, only the magic. So that word, that situation, they justified it, leading people into slaughter. So they were leading people into slaughter. Abraham was going to speak, and he was speaking and change this. So he started speaking out loud. He didn't want this done anymore, especially in his name. And he started speaking out loud. That's why he was assassinated. And that's why they still had to put something out to make the people think that his good was conquered. Okay. He wanted to free the people, free the land. He wanted to free the people and free the land. And that goes against their agenda. So they screamed tyranny. So how does that make sense? How is that tyranny when he wants to free the people in the land? And all of a sudden, Abraham said very loudly, "Speak the truth for all that you can. Speak the truth for all that you can." And I get chills when I say that. He's like speaking kind of like Malcolm in the Middle. Who made the, you know what I'm saying, right? Speak the truth, right? Speak the truth for all that you can. And that's what Abraham says to all of you. So Mount Shasta was a masculine, slit feminine's throat. Okay, it was a sacrifice of the masculine. He sacrificed the feminine there. There was bloodshed and sacrifice. So this is what they would do to the gods. Each one was sacrificed. They would force them to, they would manipulate them, get them to give up their free will. and do things outside of goodness, out of fear, out of manipulation, out of control, those kinds of things. Same thing that happened to Jesus and Mary Magdalene, except for with Jesus and Mary Magdalene, they sacrificed the masculine. Adam and Eve, they sacrificed the feminine, and they got Adam to do it. So this is what they did. Okay. So Adam chose a false goddess, by the way. Mount Shasta, which is same thing he did this lifetime. Mount Shasta, masculine, slit feminine's throat. Bloodshed and sacrifice. Enslavement of the land. Mount Shasta is enslavement of the land. Jesus's soul was enslavement of mankind. That's what the Holy Grail was. But you think it's good, right? Yeah. And wider enslavement of mankind expanded into trade and ownership of a broader kind. So sure, we'll free some Black people, but then we're just going to really enslave mankind more. So if you're going to force me to do this, I'm just going to make it to where it's less obvious. And then you're going to accept my conscious programming. And people, once they accept that to be truth, no matter what is proven, they will fight to the death for that truth. Make things appear to be an inverted or flipped mirror version of what it was. Enslavement of the land, Emancipation Proclamation, contract written in blood. So was it really written in blood? No, the Holy Grail was in Jesus's blood. The Emancipation Proclamation was written in blood because they killed Abraham Lincoln for it, and they changed it, and they made you think that we are freeing men. But so many people are going to go, well, wait a minute, though, that really did free people. Did it, though? Did it, though? Like, really think about that. Okay? I always want to say Malcolm in the middle. It kept going. People kept trying to fight for that freedom. So there really wasn't freedom for a long time. And to this day, is there freedom? They still spew hate and division in everything that we do. If they didn't spew that stuff, I guarantee you, as human species, we would know we're all connected and we wouldn't be fighting each other, no matter the color, creed, region, nothing. It's because of that veil of illusion and the hate campaigns that they keep spewing. Okay, so that's the truth of Abraham Lincoln, the Emancipation Proclamation, Mount Shasta, Hollywood. Where's Hollywood? California. Put it all together, and what do you get? Doo-doo. John Wilkes Booth was an actor and part of a politician, right? So in politics, they use a lot of celebrities to help infuse their beliefs into mankind. And we became this consumerism, kind of what people, they would call you the sheeple. And I don't like that word, but it's like, I'm going to follow blindly. This is where I need to go because they say to, right? And once I accept that blueprint, that map, even of a false foundation, because most memories are all false foundation, it's your consciousness. It filters through, right? Makes sense of the world because it's too busy, too much going on, too much to hold on to. And once it accepts something to be true, even if it's proven not to be, it will fight to the death to keep proving that lie to be something they believe it to be. Okay? So these are the things they use against you. They ain't dumb. They're not dumb. No, no. And the judicial system is part of it. Okay? Wait, did I keep going? It kept going. Sorry, I wasn't done. So the judicial system, I was like, that came out. I know it did. Judicial system, we got more to go. Judicial system takeover. So I told you Lincoln was a part of that. I think he was a lawyer. I don't know. Echo? Was Abraham Lincoln a lawyer?
Yes. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States, serving from 1861 until his assassination in 1865. He led the United States through the American Civil War, defeating the Confederate States of America and playing a major role in the abolition of slavery. Lincoln was born into poverty in Kentucky and raised on the frontier.
So he played a part in the Evolutionary War of freeing slavery. But if you read the Emancipation, it didn't free everybody. And maybe it started some things. So again, in history, anytime anybody went against it and people could see it, they would just make the illusion true. Okay? And then widen the spectrum of how they enslaved you. We're not free to this day. Our land is not free to this day. Think about it. And I could say this and people are going to argue with me. I've experienced racism because of my color where I live. Okay. Well, you're a white girl, like you weren't abused, he didn't punch you in the face and like all this kind of stuff. Like it was thrown at me hardcore. White girl, what up, white bitch? Like I'm not kidding. Like people treated me horrible where I live because I'm white. So if you think it's just one way, if you think it's just this, if you think we're freed, think again. It just changes. And it does it in a way that makes you think something happened. Because if the Emancipation Proclamation was truly good, I wouldn't have undone it. Because that's not who I am. I'm of the light, my friends. Okay. So the judicial system. Sorry about that. I forgot my ringer was on. The judicial system takeover, enslavement of Abraham and others shackled and bound, legalities changed over land and man. So he had a part, he was a lawyer, and then he was the 16th president. Okay. And if you look at the Lincoln Memorial, dude is in prison. He is enslaved. Okay. And the Emancipation Proclamation was written in his blood, not literally. That was the Holy Grail. Figuratively, because they murdered him and then changed it, and then it became legal after he died. But it wasn't what Abraham wanted. So from that time forward, the judicial system is really who's been in charge, not the White House. Lawyer, Supreme Court of Justice. And I undid the Supreme Court of Justice right after I undid the Sistine Chapel. Enslave no man. Enslave no man. That's Abraham. Enslave no man or woman. Woman. No man, woman. Instead, they strengthened the ability to lead to this. They strengthened the ability to slave you. That's not right. To enslave you. They shackled and bound and appeared just, which is why he looks like he's in prison. Appearance, appearance, appearance. I'm going to make you think this, just like in the Truman Show, right? Everywhere he went, all he saw was consumerism, fake, 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 push, 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 blah, blah, blah. And he kept screaming, I'm running to Fiji. That's what they do. They create these movies to mock you and then make you pay for your own entertainment of your own demise. Suppression of tribes and women power. Okay. So from the time Abraham died, the judicial system took over completely. Okay. They're like meshed. So is the school system, by the way. That was part of what I undid. He was a lawyer, part of the Supreme Court of Justice, and he would say, enslave no man or land. Then he also said, speak the truth no matter what, and it got him killed. And because he got out there, because they did a hate campaign, and then they had to do something with the Emancipation Proclamation, and they made him look like a hero, when in all truth, he died by fighting for mankind. He died trying to speak the truth and trying to show you what they were really doing. And they left him shackled and bound, and it appeared just. Hence why he looks like he's in prison. Appearance, appearance, appearance. So they're really good at master manipulation. That's what the whole matrix system was. Suppression of tribes and women in power. So if you think Mount Shasta was just a little thing, it's California safe. No. Why do you think the fires occurred where they occurred? And there's you guys, the world is purging what does not belong, and she will continue to do so. But see, God is good. If God was really cracking the whip and came down to judge all of you, which he doesn't do, but religion tells you he does, right? If God was really doing that and this was the apocalypse, you'd all be dead already, because I guarantee you, so many of you have done nothing but judge this work. Instead of your heart being open, it's too shadowed to seek God. But that's part of Mount Shasta. It was a veil of illusion, and it was the red dragon. And then in battling my twin soul when I was before I undid the Holy Grail, and it was a big battle where our souls started going like this. It was extremely powerful, painful, also quite beautiful. But then they attacked me, and he kept pulling apart. And so God said enough, and I got to walk in. But during that time, I was waking up David. His name was David. And that was also biblical. I was like, what the hell? And then they said I was battling the deep blue sea. So you have the deep blue sea, the red dragon, and these are prophecies of the end times. And they've been fulfilled. Also, the 3 nights, that one came out when I was doing a workshop of octaving the pyramids. The red dragon was shown completely. Okay. The biggest, darkest portal was under the Sistine Chapel. Then I undid the justice system, and they shackled and bound El Diablo. So let's think about this clearly. Let's think about this, and you can see that on my channel. Okay. Listen to me closely because this is real. I undid Mount Shasta, the Emancipation Proclamation. Part 2, Samael burned. Okay. Hear this closely. Then when I undid the Sistine Chapel, which was the darkest portal, then I undid the judicial system, and that is where they shackled and bound El Diablo. And if you look at Abraham Lincoln, he's shackled and bound behind the pillars. So was he here to create change for a good reason? Yes, he was. Just like in Salem, my friends, if you had light or a witch, they burned your ass. Didn't matter, alive, pregnant, nothing. 17, didn't matter. We undid that too. And you can find all of this on my channel. Again, I will show you where to find it. Okay. Let's see. What videos? I mean, they're all very, very, very important. Mount Shasta Part 1, freeing Jesus' soul. This one came in layers as well. At first, I just processed his death, and his soul went into a flower. And I didn't know why at the time. The masculine was not able to take on that soul. Undoing time, undoing the false concept of the moon. Oh, more pyramid activations, feminine ones, which I found out later. That's what they were. The Sphinx, what is that connection? You find out later. Portal of the Gods. Portal of Time, the Return of Christ. Here is the Deep Blue Sea. I was battling the Deep Blue Sea because this whole part right here was the battle of my twin flame and I. Undoing the false goddess. Undoing the collective and individual shadow. There's 2. You have to heal out of both to rise, period. That's not a maybe. This whole entire thing was a battle with my twin soul until I got a walk in, brought down the blood of Christ, undid the Holy Grail. These are just very important. Masculine pyramids began, Sekhmet time frame and Horus, drying the Nile, Mount Shasta Part 2, Samael burned, original fallen, the puppet master. Okay, this is all energetically, and it will be the outcome. If you watch Birthing the New Earth, all fallen is cut off from God's light. Their heartbeat, everything cut off. They become a massive nothingness that falls until it totally breaks apart. Okay, Revelations 21:13 was actually done right here. Northeast, south, and west recalibration and aligning the west back to the north. Jesus' soul left the flower and went into his rightful place. Okay, wait. There's more. So Mount Shasta, what does it mean when I say I cut it off from life support? It was part of a false foundation. This is a very important video as well. And why not everybody will ascend. You have to clear your karma. Horus returned from the Sphinx. Sekhmet and Horus was cleared. Then Adam and Eve. Timeline, which we rebirthed New Earth. And when my computer catches up, I will show you where to go to find other things. So religion was undone. That started first, started healing it, okay? Then I did a painting of the Nile, and there was Bibles and crosses burning and souls being freed, which I didn't understand yet. Then we birthed New Earth, Adam and Eve timeline. Okay, everything was undone. Day 6 is when all light was called home. You can't be duality anymore. So if you're duality, you can't come home. You can't come into the new earth. We can no longer be both shadow and light because we were never meant to be. It was only ever meant to be masculine and feminine, balance, light, God's earth, not a false one, okay? Very important. Then undid the money matrix. Wait, what does that have to do with the pentagon and the pentagram? Well, everything. Here's undoing the Sistine Chapel part 1. Very important. I told you Trump would win, and he did. I told you false foundations will crumble. Okay, it's a karmic kickback. And more and more and more and more. I kept doing. Holy crap, Sickles. Did the 2025 predictions, which have all been coming true so far. Then recently, so the Sistine Chapel part 2 was undone, and unfortunately my kids had to witness that one because there was not one person that was viable to do that with me. And it was mind-blowing, and I told you how St. Francis would die, and that's exactly how he died. Then they had me talk about Easter, on Easter, right before it, and then he died on Easter, and I didn't see that coming. But why? Very important, because right after that, Supreme Court undone, and El Diablo was shackled and bound. And when you think of what Mount Shasta was the stolen foundation of a false earth, the matrix. The veil of illusion was created because of that, because they undid God's blueprint and created one of their own through the fallen. What the darkest portal really was exposed, and then its connection to the Supreme Court of Justice was exposed. And then El Diablo was shackled. Why? Because that's what he did to mankind when they went against his agenda. Shackled and bound. And anywhere you give him your power, you are shackled and bound. 3 Knights came out, that prophecy. Here's the white dragon with the red dragon. These are workshops of octavine the pyramids, and they were blowing my mind, and it's all recorded. Okay? Octavine the planet, octavine the pyramids. That's where I just shoved more sun into all the activated pyramids and things like that. And false electrical system will fall in that. And did you know recently in Vegas, all these power flying poles just fell, and they tried to blame it on 70-mile-an-hour wind gust? Bullshit. We get 70-mile-an-hour winds here all the time, and our power poles don't go anywhere. This is like 2 miles of power poles just flattened into the street. I'm like, y'all don't even know. Okay. So it's all right there. Okay. Your White House is a puppet, part of the many systems of the Antichrist, all designed to shackle and bind and confuse and divide and blind you and take you from God. So much love. Thank you, Abraham Lincoln, for the sacrifice of a lifetime. So he was set free, just like all the souls were that were trapped there, and all the souls were that were at the Twin Towers, and all the souls, and that's what we've been doing, just setting us free. But you have to heal out of it. You are not a victim. But it's now or never. So much love. I'll see you guys later. Bye.